Have you ever had someone steal your breath, your words, and your dignity all in one sentence? I was standing in my kitchen in Mississauga, still wearing my Tim Hortons uniform from my morning shift, when my 34-year-old son Marcus walked through my front door like he owned the place. Which apparently he thought he did. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, not even bothering to take off his expensive Patagonia jacket, the one I'd helped him buy last Christmas when he claimed his sales job wasn't paying enough for winter gear. I set down my steaming cup of red rose tea, the ceramic mug trembling slightly in my hands. At 57, I'd learned to read the storm clouds in my son's eyes, and today they were particularly dark. "Sure, honey." "How was work?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "How's little Emma? Is she feeling better after that cold?" Marcus didn't sit down. He never sat down anymore when he visited, which was only when he needed something. Instead, he stood there, all 6'2" of him, looking down at me like I was a child who needed to be told how the world worked. "Sarah lost her job at the bank," he announced without preamble. "The mortgage on our place in Oakville is killing us, and Sarah's mom can't live alone anymore after her stroke." My heart did that maternal flutter it always did when one of my children was in trouble. "Oh no, Marcus. I'm so sorry to hear about Sarah's job, and poor Margaret, how is she managing?" "You know I'm always here if you need. We've already decided." He cut me off, his voice carrying that tone I'd come to dread, the one that meant my opinion was irrelevant. "Sarah, the kids, Margaret, and I are moving in here. Temporarily." Of course, the words hit me like a hockey puck to the chest. "We've already decided. Not can we talk about it? Or would you be willing to help?" Just a cold, calculated announcement of what was going to happen to my life, my home, my sanctuary. "Marcus," I said slowly, setting my mug down with deliberate care, "this is a 2-bedroom bungalow. Where exactly do you think 5 people are going to sleep?" He shrugged, as if the logistics of cramming his entire family into my modest 1,200 square foot home were merely details to be worked out later. "Emma and Jake can share the den. We'll put up a curtain or something. Sarah's mom can take your room, and you can sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. Sarah and I will take the master bedroom. We need the space and privacy." My room, my master bedroom that I finally decorated exactly how I wanted after 23 years of marriage to his father, a man who controlled every aspect of our home until the day he walked out for his secretary. "And when exactly is this supposed to happen?" I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. "The moving truck's coming Saturday. We've already given notice on our rental, and Sarah's mom's house goes on the market next week. The timing works out perfectly. Perfectly. For them." I stared at my son, this man I carried for 9 months, nursed through countless midnight fevers, cheered for at every hockey game, and financially supported through 3 career changes and 2 failed business ventures. The man who hadn't even asked if I minded surrendering my home, my bed, my life as I knew it. "Don't you think you should have discussed this with me first?" I asked, proud that my voice remained steady despite the rage building in my chest like steam in a pressure cooker. Marcus actually rolled his eyes. Rolled his eyes at his mother. "Mom, come on. It's not like you're using all this space. You work at Tim Hortons for minimum wage, for Christ's sake. You should be grateful we're willing to split the bills." Grateful. The word tasted like ashes in my mouth. "Split the bills?" I repeated. "Well, obviously we can't pay full market rent. We're in a tight spot financially. But we figured we could contribute maybe $400 a month toward utilities. And groceries. That's fair, right? $400 for 5 people. In a region where 1-bedroom apartments rented for $1,800 a month. I thought about my mortgage payment. $2,200 a month on a home I'd worked 60-hour weeks to keep after the divorce. I thought about my property taxes, my insurance, my utilities. That would skyrocket with 5 people instead of 1. I thought about the groceries I could barely afford for myself, let alone for a growing 8-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl who seemed to eat their weight in goldfish crackers every week. "And what about food?" I asked. "Margaret has dietary restrictions because of her diabetes, doesn't she?" "Sarah will handle the meal planning," Marcus said dismissively. "She's great at finding deals at Costco. You two will get along fine once you get used to having a full house again. Get used to it." As if I were a piece of furniture being relocated to make room for the new occupants. Watched my son check his Apple Watch, another purchase I'd helped finance when he claimed he needed it for his job, and realized with crystal clarity that I meant nothing to him beyond what I could provide. I wasn't his mother in this moment. I was a resource to be managed, a problem to be solved, a convenience to be utilized. Marcus, I said carefully, I need time to think about this. His jaw tightened. Think about what? Mom, we don't have other options here. Sarah's been crying every night about the money stress, and the kids need stability. I thought you'd want to help your family. Your family, not our family. His family that I was expected to subsidize and serve. Of course I want to help, I said, the words feeling like glass in my throat. But this is a huge change, and it's decided, Mom. His voice carried the finality of a judge's gavel. The truck's coming Saturday at 9 a.m. Sarah's already started packing, and we've arranged for Margaret's medical equipment to be transferred here. We'll make it work. He headed toward the door, then paused, finally showing what might have been a flicker of conscience. Look, I know it's an adjustment, but you raised me to take care of family, right? This is just temporary, until we get back on our feet. After he left, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the mortgage payment coupon on my counter. Temporary. In my experience, nothing with Marcus was ever truly temporary. When he'd moved back in at 26 after his first business failed, temporary had lasted 14 months. When I co-signed his car loan as a temporary measure, I'd ended up making the payments for 8 months straight, but this felt different. This felt like the final blow in a long series of hits I'd been too tired, too guilty, too loving to deflect. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found my sister Janet's number. She'd warned me years ago that I was enabling Marcus, that my financial generosity was creating a monster instead of a man. I defended him then, made excuses about tough economic times and bad luck. Now, as I prepared to dial her number, I wondered if it was too late to stop being the bank of mom and start being a woman who deserved respect. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Jenny? Janet's voice was warm with concern. Everything okay? You sound ... He's moving in, I said simply. All of them. And they've already decided. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Then, quietly, what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? For the first time in years, I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for certain: Saturday morning was going to come whether I was ready or not, and I needed to decide if I was going to spend the rest of my life sleeping on my own couch or if I was finally going to find my backbone. The storm Marcus had brought into my kitchen was about to become a hurricane. The only question was whether I'd let it destroy me or if I'd finally learn to dance in the rain. They say hindsight is 20/20, but sometimes it's more like a slap across the face. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a calculator, and a growing pile of bills, doing math that made my stomach churn. The numbers didn't lie. Even when I wanted them to dot my monthly take-home from Tim Hortons, $2,100 on a good month, my mortgage, $2,200, property taxes, $380, insurance, $150, utilities, just for me, $180, groceries, $300, I was already $1,110 in the hole every month, supplementing with the dwindling inheritance from my mother's estate money I'd been carefully rationing to avoid bankruptcy. With 5 people in the house, my utility bills would triple, groceries would quadruple, and Marcus's generous offer of $400 would cover maybe a week and a half of the additional expenses. At 3 a.m., I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I opened the shoebox from my closet where I kept every receipt, every canceled check, every record of money I'd given Marcus over the past decade. $5,000 for his business opportunities selling essential oils, $3,200 for the down payment on his car, $8,500 for his wedding to Sarah, $2,400 for the deposit on their first apartment, $4,800 when Sarah was on maternity leave with Jake, $6,200 for Emma's daycare when his second business venture collapsed, $3,900 for their emergency credit card payments, $2,100 for last year's family vacation to Whistler. The total made me physically ill. $36,100. $36,000 that could have paid off my credit cards, fixed my roof, or given me a cushion for emergencies. Instead, it had disappeared into the black hole of Marcus's financial irresponsibility. With never a penny repaid, my phone buzzed at 7 a.m. A text from Marcus. Sarah wants to know if you have a spare key. She's coming by this morning to measure the rooms and start planning the layout. Thanks, Mom. Not, can Sarah stop by? Or would it be convenient? Just an assumption that my time and space belonged to them now. I was still in my pajamas when Sarah's silver Honda Pilot pulled into my driveway at 8:30 a.m. Through my kitchen window, I watched her get out with a measuring tape, a notebook, and the kind of entitled confidence that only comes from knowing you're about to get exactly what you want. She knocked once and then used her key apparently Marcus had already given her. The spare without asking. Morning, Jenny. Sarah chirped, breezing into my kitchen like she was entering her own home. Hope you don't mind me starting early. I'm just so excited to get this all organized. Excited. She was excited to take over my house. Sarah, I said carefully, we haven't actually finalized any arrangements yet. She paused, her designer measuring. Tape hanging from perfectly manicured nails. Oh, Marcus said you were totally on board. I mean, we really appreciate this, Jenny. I know it's a big adjustment. Adjustment? As if I were a thermostat being recalibrated for their comfort. I'd like to sit down and actually discuss the details, I said. The financial arrangements, the timeline, the house rules, of course. Sarah interrupted, already? Heading toward my bedroom. But I figured we could sort that out as we go. Right now, I just need to make sure Mom's hospital bed will fit through the doorway. I followed her down the hall, watching her measure my master bedroom with the focused efficiency of a general planning and military occupation. She made notes. About moving my dresser, we'll put this in the basement, relocating my reading chair, the living room maybe, and replacing my queen bed with Margaret's adjustable hospital bed and their king-size mattress. Where exactly am I supposed to sleep? I asked. Oh, the pull-out couch is really comfortable, Sarah said without looking up from her measurements. And you'll probably be working early shifts anyway, so you won't be in anyone's way. In anyone's way, in my own house. Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My phone rang, Marcus. Mom, quick question. Sarah says you're being weird about the arrangements. What's the problem? I walked to the kitchen, lowering my voice. The problem is that no one asked me anything. You announced a decision, Sarah's measuring my bedroom like she already owns it, and I haven't agreed to any of this. Jesus, Mom. I thought you'd be happy to have family around again. You've been alone in that house for 3 years. Alone, he said it like it was a disease instead of a choice. Marcus, this isn't about being alone. This is about, look, I don't have time for drama right now. Sarah's mom is being discharged from the hospital tomorrow, our lease is up Friday. And the moving truck is paid for. We're kind of past the point of changing plans. The casual dismissal in his voice, the assumption that my concerns were drama, hit me like a physical blow. What if I say no? I asked quietly, silence. Then, Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. Say no to what? Mom, we're family. This is what families do. They help each other. And what have you done to help me lately? Another silence, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had turned cold. Are you seriously going to make this difficult after everything we've been through? After Dad left you and I was the one who helped you figure out the mortgage paperwork? After I spent every weekend for 2 months helping you paint this place? After everything we've been through? As if my financial sacrifice meant nothing. As if the mortgage paperwork he'd helped with by sitting at my kitchen table while I made phone calls and filled out forms was somehow equivalent to the thousands of dollars I'd given him over the years. Marcus, I said, my voice steadier. Then I felt, I need you to understand something. I can't afford this. The extra utilities, groceries, wear and tear on the house, I'm already struggling financially, and adding 4 more people will bankrupt me. That's why we're contributing $400 a month, he said impatiently. And Sarah's a great cook. She'd probably save you money on food by buying in bulk and meal planning. $400 for 5 people, including an elderly woman, with medical needs and 2 growing children. That doesn't even cover the increased utilities, I said. Mom, you're being ridiculous. You act like we're asking you to support us or something. We're adults. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Just like he'd figured out his essential oils business. Just like he'd figured out his debt consolidation. Just like he'd figured out every other financial mess that had somehow become my responsibility to solve. I heard Sarah calling from my bedroom. Jenny, where do you keep your extra linens? We'll need to set up the kids' room today so they can get used to the new space before the move. The kids' room. My den where I kept my books, my desk, my sewing machine, the things that made this house feel like home instead of just a place. Where I slept between shifts. I have to go, Marcus said. Sarah needs me to sign some paperwork for her mom's discharge. We'll be over tonight with pizza to celebrate the new living arrangements, and Mom, try to be positive about this. The kids are really excited about living with Grandma. He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, listening to Sarah rearrange my bedroom furniture, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, crack. Like ice on a lake when the temperature starts to rise. I thought about Marcus. At 8 years old, crying in the same kitchen when his father missed another hockey game. I thought about the nights I'd work double shifts at the restaurant so I could afford his equipment, his registration fees, his team dinners. I thought about the pride in his eyes when he scored his first goal, how he pointed at me in the stands and shouted, "That's for you, Mom." When had I stopped being the person he wanted to make proud and become the person he expected to solve his problems? When had love become synonymous with being used? I walked to my bedroom doorway and watched Sarah measure the space for my reading. Chair had sat for 3 years my favorite spot in the house, where I drank my morning coffee and watched the sunrise through the window. "Sarah," I said quietly, "I need you to stop." She looked up, surprised. "Stop what?" "All of it. The measuring, the planning, the assuming. I haven't agreed to any of this yet." For the first time since she'd arrived, Sarah looked uncertain. "But Marcus said." "Marcus doesn't speak for me," I said. And the words felt like the first true thing I'd said in years. This is my house, and I get to decide who lives in it. Sarah's perfectly composed expression faltered. "Jenny, I hope. We haven't overstepped. It's just ... We're really in a bind here, and Marcus said you were excited about having us all together," Marcus said. Everything in my life had become about what Marcus said, what Marcus wanted, what Marcus needed. "I think you should go," I said. "Go?" Sarah's voice pitched higher. "But the moving truck, I think you and Marcus need to find other arrangements." Sarah stared at me for a long moment, her measuring tape hanging forgotten in her hands. Then, her face hardened, and I saw a glimpse of the steel beneath her sweet exterior. "You know," she said quietly, "Marcus warned me this might happen. He said you've been difficult since the divorce. That you might try to use this situation to get attention. Difficult. Attention. I think you should leave," I repeated, but my voice was shaking now. After Sarah left, I sat on my couch, the couch I was supposed to sleep on while strangers took over my bedroom and called in sick to work. For the first time in 3 years, I couldn't face smiling at customers and pretending everything was fine. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I made a list of every sacrifice I'd made for Marcus. Every boundary I'd let him cross. Every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. The list was 3 pages long. At the bottom, I wrote one sentence that would change everything. I raised a man who thinks love means never having to say please. Or thank you. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person who never lied to me about what Marcus had become. "Janet? It's me. I think I need a lawyer." Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, it sets you on fire. Janet arrived within an hour, carrying a box of Timbits and the business card of a family lawyer she'd used during her own messy divorce 5 years earlier. Her face was grim as she surveyed the measuring tape Sarah had left on my kitchen counter and the furniture arrangements sketched in my bedroom. "Christ, Jenny," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "They really thought they could just move in and take over." "Marcus says it's temporary," I said, the words tasting hollow even as I spoke them. "Marcus has been saying a lot of things for a lot of years," Janet replied. "None of them true." At 2 p.m., we sat in the downtown Toronto office of Patricia Kellner, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened to my story with the kind of professional calm that comes from hearing human ugliness every day. "Let me understand this correctly," she said, reviewing the notes she'd taken. Your adult son informed you that he and 4 other people would be moving into your home, sleeping in your bedroom, and contributing $400 monthly toward expenses that will likely exceed $1,500? That's right. And he made this announcement, not a request. He said they'd already decided. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Miss Harrison, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Has your son ever had access to your financial accounts? Your personal documents? Your social insurance number? The questions hit like ice water. Well, yes, when I was overwhelmed after the divorce, he helped me organize my paperwork. He has my banking information for the times I've transferred money to him, and he's listed as an emergency contact on most of my accounts. I see. Patricia made more notes. I'm going to recommend we run a credit check and review your banking statements for the past 2 years. Given the pattern of financial exploitation you've described, I want to make sure there haven't been any other irregularities. Irregularities? Such a clean word for what felt like a growing suspicion that my son might be an even bigger monster than I'd realized. We were walking out of Patricia's office when my phone rang. Marcus, Mom, what the hell did you say to Sarah? She came home, crying, saying you kicked her out and told her we couldn't move in. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I stopped walking, Janet's hand steady on my arm. I told her the truth, that I never agreed to any of this. Never agreed? Mom, we talked about this yesterday. I told you what was happening and you didn't say no. Not saying no isn't the same as saying yes, Marcus. Oh, for fuck's sake. His voice turned sharp, ugly. Do you know what Sarah thinks? She thinks you're jealous that I have a family and you don't. That you're trying to sabotage our marriage because you can't stand that I chose her over you. The words hit like a physical slap. Marcus. And you know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe this is all about you being bitter and alone and wanting to drag everyone else down with you. Janet grabbed the phone from my hand before I could respond. Marcus? This is your Aunt Janet. You have exactly 10 seconds to apologize to your mother, or I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of a 34-year-old man who speaks to the woman who raised him like she's garbage. Aunt Janet, this is none of your business. The hell it isn't. Your mother has given you over $36,000 in the past decade, worked herself into exhaustion to support your financial mistakes, and now you want to steal her bedroom and charge her for the privilege? You're a parasite, Marcus. A spoiled, entitled parasite. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? Your mother is done being your personal ATM, and if you had any decency left, you thank her for everything she's done instead of trying to guilt her into homelessness. The line went dead. Janet handed me back my phone. Feel better? Actually, I said, surprised by the lightness in my chest, yes, but the relief was short-lived. 20 minutes later, as we sat in my kitchen drinking tea and planning next steps, Marcus's Honda Civic screeched into my driveway. He didn't knock out the front door slammed open, and Marcus stormed into my kitchen with the kind of rage I hadn't seen since he was a teenager being denied something he wanted. But this wasn't teenage anger, this was something uglier, more calculating. You called Janet? He snarled, ignoring his aunt completely. You actually called in reinforcements to gang up on your own son? Marcus, I said, standing up slowly, you need to calm down. Calm down? Mom, do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah's mom is being discharged tomorrow. Our lease is up. The moving truck is paid for. We have nowhere else to go. That's not my responsibility, I said, and the words felt like breaking chains. Marcus stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Not your responsibility? I'm your son. Emma and Jake are your grandchildren. How is our welfare not your responsibility? Because you're 34 years old, Janet said quietly. Because you have a wife and a job and the ability to solve your own problems. Stay out of this, Marcus snapped, but kept his focus on me. Mom, I need you to think really carefully about what you're doing here. Because if you don't help us now, if you force us onto the street, I don't think our relationship recovers from that. Our relationship? As if what we had could be called. A relationship instead of a series of one-sided transactions. Are you threatening me? I asked. I'm explaining reality, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. You want to be selfish? Fine, but don't expect me to bring the kids around for Christmas visits when you've made it clear that your comfort matters more than your family's survival. The threat was clear. Give us what we want, or you'll never see your grandchildren again. I thought about Emma's gap-toothed smile, Jake's endless questions about everything from dinosaurs to how microwaves work. I thought about birthday parties and Christmas mornings and all the moments Marcus was preparing to steal from me if I didn't surrender. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house, now." Marcus's face twisted with something I barely recognized. "You're really going to choose being bitter over helping your family?" "I'm choosing self-respect over being exploited." "Exploited?" Marcus laughed, but it was a harsh, ugly sound. "Mom, you work at Tim Hortons. You live in a house you can barely afford, driving a car that's older than my marriage. Without us, what exactly do you have? Who's going to take care of you when you're old and sick and alone?" The cruelty was breathtaking. The casual way he dismantled my life, my worth, my future, reducing me to nothing more than a burden he might or might not choose to shoulder someday. I said, "Get out." "Fine," Marcus snarled, heading for the door. "But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've thrown away. And don't expect to see Emma and Jake again anytime soon. Sarah thinks you're having some kind of mental health crisis, and frankly, I'm starting to agree." After he left, I sat in my kitchen shaking, not from fear but from fury. The kind of white-hot rage that burns through decades of accumulated guilt and leaves only clarity behind. "That," Janet said quietly, "was not your son talking. That was someone else entirely." She was right. The Marcus who just threatened to weaponize my grandchildren against me wasn't the boy I'd raised. He was a stranger wearing my son's face, and I was done pretending otherwise. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Grandma, Daddy says we can't see you anymore because you're being mean to Mommy. I'm sad." Emma, my hands were shaking as I showed Janet the message. "He's using a 10-year-old to guilt you," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "Jenny, that's not just manipulation. That's psychological abuse." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus's words, about the future he'd painted where I was old and alone and at his mercy, about how casually he'd threatened to cut me off from Emma and Jake, about how perfectly he'd known exactly which emotional buttons to push at 3 a.m. I called Patricia Kellner's emergency line. "Miss Harrison, what's wrong?" "I want to change my will," I said. "And I want to know what legal options I have to protect myself from my son." "I'll see you first thing in the morning," she said. "And Miss Harrison, document everything. Every threat, every message, every interaction. We're going to need it." The next morning, Patricia had news that made my blood run cold. "We found something," she said, sliding a bank statement across her desk. 3 unauthorized transactions from your savings account over the past 18 months. Small amounts, $200 here, $300 there, but they add up to nearly $2,000. I stared at the highlighted entries, my vision blurring. "I don't understand. I never authorized these. The transactions were made online, using your banking credentials. Someone with access to your personal information has been slowly draining your savings account." "Marcus," I whispered. "We can't prove it yet," Patricia said. "But given his access to your financial information and the pattern of exploitation, yes, I'd say he's our primary suspect. $2,000. Stolen from me by my own son while he looked me in the eye and asked for more." "There's something else," Patricia continued. "I had my investigator do a basic background check on Marcus. His employment history, financial records, that sort of thing." She slid another document across the desk, a credit report. "Your son isn't struggling financially, Miss Harrison. According to this, he has $37,000 in savings and investments. His credit score is excellent, and his actual salary is $68,000 a year, considerably more than he's led you to believe." The room spun. $68,000 a year. While I worked for minimum wage and worried about making my mortgage payment. While he took my money and claimed he was broke. While he planned to move into my house and charge me for the privilege. "He's been lying," I said numbly. "About everything," Patricia confirmed. "The question is, what do you want to do about it?" I thought about Emma's message, about Marcus's threats, about $36,000 given freely and $2,000 stolen in secret, about a man who'd spent years systematically lying to and stealing from his mother while playing the victim. "I want to destroy him," I said quietly. "I want him to lose everything the way he was planning to take everything from me." Patricia smiled for the first time since I'd met her. Then let's talk about your options. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes it's even better served with legal documentation and a paper trail. The police report was filed by 10 a.m. Friday morning. Fraud, identity theft, unauthorized access to financial accounts. The officer, Constable Maria Santos, listened to my story with the kind of professional attention that made me realize I wasn't the first mother to sit in this chair, clutching bank statements and fighting back tears. The good news, she said, is that you have excellent documentation. The bad news is that family fraud cases can be complicated to prosecute. Are you prepared for the possibility that your son might be arrested? 6 months ago, the question would have destroyed me. Today, it felt like justice. Yes, I said firmly. I'm prepared. Patricia was waiting in the lobby when I finished with Constable Santos. She'd spent the morning filing an emergency injunction to freeze Marcus's access to any of my accounts and drafting a new will that would ensure my son never profited from his theft and manipulation. How do you feel? She asked as we walked to her car. Terrified, I admitted, but also ... lighter? Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long, I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. That's the feeling of getting your power back, Patricia said. Now comes the fun part. The fun part, apparently, involved strategic warfare. Patricia had developed what she called the exposure plan, a systematic dismantling of Marcus's carefully constructed narrative that would reveal him for what he really was. Step 1 was already in motion, a formal demand for repayment of the stolen funds, delivered by courier to his workplace. Public humiliation is a powerful motivator, Patricia explained as we sat in her office, reviewing the documentation. Your son has built his life on lies and manipulation. When those lies are exposed, the house of cards tends to fall very quickly. My phone had been buzzing with increasingly frantic messages all morning. Marcus, Mom, what the hell is this legal? Letter about? Call me now. Sarah, Jenny, there must be some misunderstanding. Marcus would never steal from you. Marcus, you've lost your fucking mind if you think I'm paying you back for money you gave me. Sarah, please call us. The kids are asking questions and we don't know what to tell them. Marcus, this is harassment. I'm calling a lawyer. I turned off my phone. At 2 p.m., we implemented step 2, a visit to Marcus's HR department. Miss Harrison, the director said after reviewing Patricia's documentation, I want to assure you that we take allegations of employee fraud very seriously. While we can't discuss personnel matters, I can tell you that this information will be thoroughly investigated. Thank you, I said. I just want to make sure that if Marcus has been lying to us about his financial situation, you're aware that he might be misrepresenting other things as well. Translation: we know he's a liar. And now you do too. Step 3 happened at 4 p.m., a call to Sarah's sister Michelle, whom I'd remained close to even after Marcus and Sarah married. Michelle had always been the family truth teller, the one person who saw through Marcus's charm. Jenny? Michelle's voice was warm with concern. I heard there's some kind of family drama happening. Michelle, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has Marcus ever asked you or David for money? Silence. Then, quietly, oh, Jenny, what has he done? The story that emerged made my stomach turn. Marcus had borrowed $12,000 from Michelle and David 2 years ago, claiming he needed emergency money for Emma's medical bills after a supposed accident. He'd promised to pay it back within 6 months. There was no accident, was there? Michelle asked, her voice hollow. Emma's never been seriously injured, I confirmed. Marcus has been lying to all of us. That bastard, Michelle whispered. David wanted to ask you about it, but Marcus said you were struggling financially and he didn't want to burden you with more family problems. More family problems. As if I was the problem, not the son who was systematically defrauding everyone. Who loved him? Michelle, there's something else you need to know, I said, and told her about the stolen money, the lies about his salary, and his plan to move his entire family into my house while charging me for the privilege. When I finished, Michelle was quiet for a long moment. Then, Jenny, David's a forensic accountant. If you want to find out exactly how deep this goes, he can help. By 6 p.m., David had uncovered a financial trail that painted Marcus as a sociopathic con artist who'd been running elaborate scams on his own family for years. Sarah's job loss? She'd actually been promoted to assistant manager and received a substantial raise. Margaret's emergency? Her house wasn't being sold. She was moving into a luxury senior living facility that Marcus had convinced her to pay for entirely herself while he claimed financial hardship. Jesus Christ, David said, scrolling through the credit reports and public records he'd pulled. Your son isn't broke, Jenny. Between his salary, Sarah's income, and their savings, they're probably pulling in close to $90,000 a year. They could easily afford their own place. Then why? I asked, though I was beginning to understand the answer. Because it's easier to take yours, Patricia said bluntly. Why pay for a house when you can guilt your mother into giving you hers? Why budget responsibly when you can steal from family members who trust you? That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I cooked myself a real dinner. Not a frozen meal or takeout, but actual comfort food roast chicken with vegetables. Mashed potatoes, gravy made from scratch. I set my table with the good china my mother had left me, lit candles, and ate in my dining room instead of standing at the kitchen counter. It felt like a celebration. At 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Marcus's Honda Inn. The driveway, Sarah in the passenger seat, the kids in the back. I didn't answer. The doorbell rang again, then knocking. Then Marcus's voice, carefully modulated to sound reasonable. Mom, we know you're in there. We just want to talk. I stayed. In my dining room, finishing my dinner, listening to my son try to manipulate me one more time. The kids want to see their grandma. Sarah called through the door. Emma made you a card. Using the children. Just like the text message. Just like every other emotional weapon in Marcus's arsenal. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Grandma, are you sick? Daddy says you can't see us because you're not feeling well. I made you a get well card. Love, Emma. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Patricia with a note. More evidence of him using the children for manipulation. The knocking continued for 20 minutes before they finally gave up and left. At 9 p.m., my phone rang. Janet. How are you holding up? She asked. Better than I expected, I said honestly. Angry but clear, like I can finally see everything without the fog of guilt and obligation. Good, because I have news. I've been making some calls, doing some digging. You remember how Marcus always claimed his father walked out and abandoned you both? Of course. Well, I tracked down your ex-husband. Tom's been trying to contact Marcus for years. Turns out he's been sending birthday cards, Christmas gifts, even college graduation money. None of it ever reached Marcus. The world tilted. What are you saying? I'm saying Marcus has been intercepting communication from his father for over a decade. Tom thinks his son wants nothing to do with him because Marcus has never responded to any of his attempts at contact. Another lie. Another manipulation. Another relationship Marcus had poisoned for his own purposes. Why would he do that? I asked, though I was beginning to understand that asking why about Marcus's behavior was like asking why cancer spreads. It wasn't rational. It was just destructive. Control, Janet said simply. As long as you believed. Tom abandoned you both. Marcus was your only family. Your only priority, your only responsibility. I hung up and sat in my quiet house, surrounded by the wreckage of 34 years of lies. Marcus hadn't just stolen my money, he'd stolen my relationships, my peace of mind, my ability to trust my own judgment, but he'd also made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. At 10 p.m., I called Patricia's emergency line one more time. I want to file a restraining order, I said. And I want to explore pressing charges for fraud, identity theft, and financial elder abuse. Are you sure? Patricia asked. Once we go down this road, there's no going back. Marcus will likely be arrested, possibly jailed. Your relationship with him will be permanently severed. I thought about the Marcus I'd raised, the boy who pointed at me in the hockey stands and dedicated his first goal to his mom. Then I thought about the man who threatened to weaponize my grandchildren against me and stolen from my savings account while looking me in the eye. The relationship is already severed, I said. He killed it the moment he decided I was something to be used instead of someone to be loved. Then let's bury him, Patricia said. Saturday morning, the day Marcus's moving truck was supposed to arrive at my house, I woke up in my own bed, in my own room, with sunlight streaming through windows that belonged to me and no one else. By noon, Marcus would discover that the war he'd started was about to become the fight of his life. And for the first time in years, I was playing to win. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when they're finally exposed, watch how quickly they show you who they've always been. The call came at 7:23 a.m. on Saturday morning. Constable Santos, her voice professionally neutral, but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. Ms. Harrison, I wanted to inform you that we executed the arrest warrant for Marcus Harrison at 6:45 this morning. He's been charged with fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of financial instruments. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, trying to process the words. My son was in jail. The boy I'd nursed through chicken pox and cheered at graduation was sitting in a cell, arrested for stealing from his mother. What happens now? I asked. He'll be held until his bail hearing on Monday morning. Given the charges and the evidence, bail will likely be set quite high. I thought you should know we expect he'll be trying to contact you or other family members for bail money. Bail money. Of course. Even from jail, Marcus would try to make his problems my financial responsibility. Thank you, Constable Santos. I won't be posting bail. I figured as much, she said, and I could hear the approval in her voice. Miss Harrison, you did the right thing. I've seen too many families destroyed by this kind of manipulation. You should be proud of yourself for fighting back. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete peace. No urgent phone calls, no financial emergencies. No one demanding my money, my time, my bedroom, my life, just silence and the kind of freedom that comes from finally cutting the rope that's been dragging you underwater. The silence didn't last long. At 8:15, my doorbell rang. Sarah, looking haggard and desperate, with Emma and Jake trailing behind her. Through the window, I could see the moving truck parked across the street. Apparently, Marcus hadn't bothered to cancel it before his arrest. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. Jenny, please, Sarah said, her perfectly composed mask finally slipping. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Marcus is in jail and they're saying he stole money from you, but that's impossible. You gave him that money freely. Which money? I asked calmly. The $2,000 he stole from my savings account? Or the $36,000 I gave him over the years while he lied about his income? Sarah's face went white. His income? $68,000 a year, Sarah, plus your salary. You two have been making close to $90,000 annually while Marcus convinced me he was broke. That's not possible, Sarah stammered. Marcus handles all our finances. He told me we were barely scraping by, that we needed family. Help to survive. Behind her, Emma tugged on her mother's coat. Mommy, why can't we go inside Grandma's house? Because, I said gently, crouching down to Emma's level, Grandma needs some space right now, sweetheart. Are you mad at Daddy? Jake asked, his 8-year-old face serious with concern. Are you mad at Daddy? How do you explain to a child that their father is a criminal? That he's been lying and stealing and manipulating everyone who loved him? Your daddy made some bad choices, I said carefully. And now he has to face the consequences. Sarah's composure cracked completely. Jenny, please. I know there are problems, but the kids need stability. We have nowhere to go. Marcus said this house arrangement was all set up, and now you'll have to figure it out, I said, standing up. The same way Marcus should have figured it out instead of planning to steal my home. We're not stealing anything. Sarah protested. We were going to pay rent. $400 for 5 people isn't rent, Sarah. It's exploitation. I could see the exact moment when the truth hit her, when she realized that her husband had been lying to her too, that the financial crisis she'd been worrying about was manufactured, that she'd been living in a fantasy Marcus had created to justify his greed. Oh my God, she whispered. What has he done? My phone rang. The Peel Regional Detention Center. Mom? Marcus's voice was strained, desperate. Mom, thank God. Listen, there's been a huge mistake. The police have everything wrong, and I need you to call Patricia Kellner and tell her to drop the charges. This is all just a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said calmly. You stole from me. You lied to me. You threatened me. You used my grandchildren as weapons against me. Mom, please, and you're still doing it. You're calling from jail, asking me to fix your problems. Even now, you think I'm responsible for cleaning up your mess. I'm your son. Marcus's voice cracked with desperation. I made mistakes, okay? But you can't just abandon your family. I'm not abandoning my family, I said. I'm protecting myself from a thief who happens to share my DNA. Don't do this, Mom. Don't destroy our relationship over money. Please, I'll pay you back, I swear. Every penny. Just drop the charges and post my bail and we'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. Even from jail, he couldn't resist making his problems into shared problems. How much is your bail, Marcus? $50,000, he said, hope creeping into his voice. I know it sounds like a lot, but you can put the house up as collateral. And I hung up. Sarah was staring at me through the gap in the door, tears streaming down her face. $50,000? Jenny, we don't have $50,000. According to the financial records, you have $37,000 in savings, I said. Plus equity and investments. Marcus has been lying to you about money the same way he lied to me. That's impossible, Sarah said, but her voice was hollow. I handle our day-to-day expenses, but Marcus manages our savings and investments. He said we had maybe $3,000 in emergency funds. Sarah, I said gently, you need to get to a bank today, and you need to check every account, every investment, every asset Marcus has told you about. I think you're going to find some very unpleasant surprises. The moving truck driver chose that moment to knock on my door. Ma'am, I've got a full truck here and nowhere to unload it. The gentleman who hired me is apparently unavailable and his wife says the move is canceled. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at the truck like it represented the collapse of her entire world. The move is definitely canceled, I confirmed. You'll need to take it up with Marcus. But he's in jail, the driver said, confused. Yes, I said. He is. After the truck left and Sarah drove away with the children, I called Patricia. How are you holding up? She asked. Better than expected, I said. What happens next? Well. Marcus's employer has placed him on unpaid administrative leave pending the outcome of the criminal charges. The bank fraud division is now investigating all his accounts for additional irregularities. And I've been contacted by 3 other family members who suspect Marcus may have defrauded them as well. 3 others? His father-in-law, a cousin in Vancouver, and interestingly enough, his own father. Apparently, Tom Harrison has been trying to establish contact with Marcus for years and has been sending money through various channels. Money that Marcus claimed never arrived. The scope of Marcus's deception was staggering. He hadn't just been stealing from me, he'd been running a multi-year con game on everyone who cared about him. There's more, Patricia continued. Sarah called my office an hour ago. She's requesting legal representation for herself and the children. It seems Marcus has been forging her signature on loan documents and has taken out credit cards in her name without her knowledge. So she's a victim too? It appears so. According to the preliminary investigation, Marcus has been systematically defrauding his wife, his children's college funds, and several family members while maintaining the facade of financial hardship. I thought about Sarah's shocked face, her genuine confusion about their financial situation. For all her entitlement about moving into my house, she'd been manipulated just as thoroughly as I had. How much money are we talking about? Conservatively? Close to $200,000 over the past 8 years, possibly more, $200,000. Stolen from family members who loved and trusted him while he played the victim and claimed poverty. Patricia, I said slowly, I want to make sure Sarah and the children are protected. Whatever Marcus has done to me, Emma and Jake don't deserve to suffer for their father's crimes. That's very generous of you, considering they were planning to take over your house. Sarah was manipulated too, I said. Marcus is the predator. Here, not her. At 3 p.m. my doorbell rang again. This time it was Michelle and David carrying grocery bags and grin expressions. We brought dinner, Michelle said. And some news you need to hear. Over homemade lasagna, the first meal I hadn't eaten alone in months. They told me what their financial investigation had uncovered. Jenny, David said carefully, Marcus hasn't just been stealing money. He's been building a second life. A secret life? What do you mean? He owns property in Ottawa under a shell company. A luxury condo worth about $400,000. He's been funneling stolen money into this separate life for years. He has a girlfriend, Michelle added. Quietly. A woman named Stephanie Chen. She works in the same building as Marcus. And according to social media, they've been together for at least 3 years. The room went silent except for the ticking of my kitchen clock. 3 years, I repeated. Numbly, the condo is in both their names, David continued. They've been living together part-time while he maintains his marriage to Sarah. He's been telling Stephanie that Sarah is his ex-wife who won't let him see his kids unless he pays. Excessive child support. More lies. Marcus hadn't just been stealing money, he'd been stealing years of Sarah's life, lying to her face while building a relationship with another woman. Does Sarah know? Not yet, Michelle said, but she will. We've compiled all the evidence. And Patricia is meeting with her tomorrow. That night I sat in my living room, where I would sleep in my own bed tonight and every night and tried to process the magnitude of Marcus's betrayal. He wasn't just a thief. He was a sociopath who'd been systematically destroying the lives of everyone, who loved him while building himself a secret paradise funded by their pain. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Stephanie. I think we need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I think you're right. Tomorrow I would learn just how deep Marcus's web of lies really went. But tonight, for the first time in years, I would sleep peacefully in my own bed in my own house, surrounded by the quiet dignity of a woman who had finally learned to value herself more than a relationship with someone who saw her as nothing more than an ATM. With a heartbeat, the war wasn't over yet. But I was no longer fighting alone, and Marcus was about to discover that the mother he tried to destroy had allies he never knew existed. Game on. Justice isn't always swift, but when it finally arrives, it's thorough. I met Stephanie Chen at a Tim Hortons in downtown Toronto. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 28, with the kind of professional polish that comes from a corner office and a salary that doesn't require counting pennies. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately from the photos David had found on social media, Marcus's secret girlfriend, the woman he'd been building a life with while systematically destroying mine. Mrs. Harrison, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting me. I don't even know where to begin. Call me Jenny, I said, studying her face. There was something familiar about her expression, the hollow look of someone who just discovered that their entire relationship was built on lies. Marcus told me you were his bitter ex-wife, Stephanie said without preamble. He said you turned his children against him, that you demanded ridiculous amounts of money in alimony and child support, that you'd made his life hell after the divorce. We were never married, I said quietly. I'm his mother. Stephanie's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. His what? His mother, Sarah, is his wife. Emma and Jake are his children. The bitter ex-wife who was supposedly bleeding him dry? That's me. His mother, who's been financially supporting him for over a decade. The color drained from Stephanie's face. That's impossible. He doesn't have a mother. He told me she died when he was young, that he grew up in foster care. Another lie. Another carefully constructed fiction designed to manipulate sympathy and avoid accountability. Marcus has been living with you in Ottawa while telling his wife he's working late or traveling for business, I continued. The condo you share? It's paid for with money he's stolen from his family. Stolen? Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. I showed her the financial documents Patricia had compiled, the bank fraud, the forged signatures, the shell companies, the elaborate network of lies that had funded Marcus's double life. Oh my God, Stephanie breathed, staring at the papers. Oh my God, what have I done? You've been manipulated, I said gently, just like the rest of us. But we were planning to get married. He said he was just waiting for his divorce to be finalized, that his ex-wife was being vindictive about the paperwork. I've been helping him pay for lawyers, for court fees. More lies, more theft. Marcus had been taking money from his girlfriend to pay for fictional legal problems while stealing from his mother and wife to fund his lifestyle. Stephanie, I said. Carefully, how much money have you given him? Her face crumpled. $38,000, over 3 years. For legal fees, emergency expenses, his daughter's medical bills. Emma's never had medical bills, I said. She's perfectly healthy. Stephanie put her head in her hands and sobbed. Not the delicate tears of a woman trying to maintain her composure, but the raw, ugly crying of someone whose world had just imploded. I helped him plan the proposal, she whispered. He was going to ask me to marry him next month after his divorce was final, I thought. I thought we were building a life together. You were, I said. He was just building it with stolen money and stolen time. That afternoon, Stephanie, Sarah, and I sat in Patricia's office like survivors of the same disaster, comparing notes and piecing together the full scope of Marcus's deception. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd spent years perfecting the art of emotional manipulation, creating elaborate fictional narratives to justify taking money from everyone who cared about him. The question now, Patricia said, is what you all want to see happen at his sentencing hearing. Marcus had pled guilty to multiple charges of fraud and identity theft in exchange for a reduced sentence. His lawyer, a public defender, since his assets had been frozen and no one was willing to pay for private representation, had recommended the plea deal to avoid a lengthy trial that would only expose more of his crimes. I want him to face consequences, Sarah said firmly. Real consequences. Not another slap on the wrist that lets him think he can charm his way out of taking responsibility. I want my money back, Stephanie added. And I want him to admit publicly what he's done. I need people to know I wasn't complicit in this. I thought about what I wanted. For years, I'd wanted my son to love me, appreciate me, treat me with respect. Now I realize those things had never been possible with the man Marcus had become, or maybe the man he'd always been. I want him to understand that there are consequences for treating people like they're disposable, I said finally. And I want to make sure he can never do this to anyone else. The sentencing hearing was held on a gray November morning that matched my mood. I sat in the gallery with Sarah, Stephanie, Michelle, David, and surprisingly Tom Harrison, Marcus's father, who'd driven down from Sudbury after learning about his son's arrest. 30 years, Tom said quietly as we waited for the proceedings to begin. 30 years he let me believe he wanted nothing to do with me. 30 years of return letters and ignored phone calls because he was stealing the money I was trying to send him. Marcus was led into the courtroom in handcuffs, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller somehow. When his eyes found mine in the gallery, I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Not the calculated manipulation he'd used when he wanted something, but real terror at facing consequences he couldn't charm or lie his way out of. Judge Patricia McDonald reviewed the case with the kind of methodical precision that made it clear she'd seen plenty of family fraud cases. When she asked if any of the victims wanted to make impact statements, Sarah stood first. "Your Honor?" she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Marcus Harrison stole more than money from me. He stole 8 years of my life. 8 years where I believed I was married to a man who loved me when I was actually just another mark in his long con. He stole my children's college funds. He forged my signature on documents that destroyed my credit. And worst of all, he made me complicit in trying to steal from his mother, a woman who'd already sacrificed everything for him." Stephanie spoke next, her professional composure intact but her voice shaking with anger. "I helped fund Marcus Harrison's crimes because I believed his lies about being a struggling single father. He didn't just steal my money, he stole 3 years of my life, made me an unwitting accomplice to fraud, and destroyed my ability to trust my own judgment about people I care about." When Judge McDonald asked if I wanted to speak, I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 34 years of manipulation and theft. "Your Honor, Marcus Harrison isn't just my son, he's a master manipulator who spent decades perfecting the art of emotional abuse. He identified every person who loved him and systematically turned that love into a weapon against them. He stole my money, my peace of mind, and my relationship with my grandchildren. But more than that, he stole my belief that love and sacrifice matter. It's taken me 57 years to learn that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you." I paused, looking directly at Marcus, who was staring at the table in front of him. "I don't forgive him," I continued. "I don't want him in my life, and I don't want him to have any access to me or my resources ever again. What I want is for him to serve his time, pay his restitution, and learn that the world doesn't owe him anything just because he's charming." Judge McDonald sentenced Marcus to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. He was ordered to pay full restitution to all his victims, a total of $247,000, and prohibited from contacting any of us except through court-approved channels. As the bailiff led him away, Marcus looked back at me one last time. I thought I saw him mouth the word mom, but I didn't respond. The woman who would have rushed to comfort him, who would have made excuses for his behavior, who would have mortgaged her house to pay for his defense, that woman was gone. In her place sat someone who'd finally learned the difference between love and enabling. After the hearing, Tom approached me hesitantly. "Jenny," he said, "I know we haven't spoken since the divorce, but I want you to know I tried. I tried to be part of Marcus's life, to help support him. He made sure that never happened." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry. If I'd known ... we were both manipulated," Tom said gently. "But maybe we can figure out how to have a relationship with Emma and Jake that doesn't involve their father." 6 months later ... I was transplanting tomatoes in my back garden when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Sarah's car in the driveway, Emma and Jake bouncing excitedly in the back seat. "Hi, Jenny," Sarah said when I opened the door. She looked healthier than she had in months. The constant stress of Marcus's financial manipulation had lifted, and she'd started therapy to deal with the trauma of discovering her marriage had been an elaborate lie. "The kids have been asking about their grandma," she continued, "and I thought, if you're okay with it ... maybe they could spend the afternoon with you. I have some job interviews downtown." Sarah had filed for divorce the day after Marcus's sentencing and was rebuilding her life as a single mother. It wasn't easy, but she'd gotten a promotion at work and was slowly repairing the financial damage Marcus had caused. "I'd love that," I said, and meant it. Emma and Jake raced into my house like they'd never been away, immediately gravitating toward the art supplies I'd set up on the kitchen table. "Grandma," Emma said as she colored, "Mommy says Daddy made bad choices and that's why he can't live with us anymore." "That's right, sweetheart. Are you still mad at Daddy?" Jake asked. I thought about the question, really thought about it. Was I still angry? The white-hot rage that had sustained me through the police reports and court hearings had faded into something quieter but more permanent, a clear-eyed understanding of who Marcus really was and a determination never to let him hurt me again. "I'm not angry anymore," I said honestly. "But I'm also not going to let Daddy's bad choices hurt our family again." "Good," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Mommy says we're stronger without him." Sarah was right. They were stronger without Marcus, and so was I that evening after Sarah picked up the kids. I called Stephanie. We'd developed an unlikely friendship over the past few months, two women who'd learned the hard way that loving someone doesn't mean accepting their abuse. "How did the house hunting go?" I asked. "I found one," she said, excitement in her voice. "A little bungalow in Mississauga, actually, about 10 minutes from you." "That's wonderful." Stephanie's starting fresh too, using the money she'd recovered from Marcus's frozen accounts to buy her first home and rebuild her life. "There's something else," she said. "I got a call from the Victim Services Coordinator today. Marcus is requesting a meeting with his victims as part of his rehabilitation program." "Are you going?" "Hell no," Stephanie said firmly. "I don't owe him my forgiveness or my time. What about you?" I thought about it. Did I want to see Marcus again? Did I want to hear whatever manipulative apology he crafted to try to reduce his sentence or ease his conscience? "No," I said. "I'm done being his audience." As I hung up the phone, I realized something had shifted inside me over the past 6 months. The woman who'd spent decades making herself smaller to accommodate Marcus's demands had been replaced by someone who took up space unapologetically, who said no without guilt, who valued her own peace more than other people's approval. I was finally truly free. That night, I sat in my reading chair, the one I'd almost lost to Sarah's measuring tape, and opened the letter that had arrived that morning from the victim restitution office. Marcus had been assigned to a prison work program, and his wages would be garnished to pay back his victims. It would take years, maybe decades, but we would eventually recover our money. More importantly, Marcus would spend those years understanding that actions have consequences, that stealing from people who love you doesn't go unpunished, and that charm and manipulation can't fix everything. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, exhausted, financially struggling, desperate for her son's approval. That woman would have visited Marcus in prison, would have worried about his mental health, would have found a way to blame herself for his choices. The woman I'd become turned off the lights, checked the locks on her doors, and went to bed in her own house, surrounded by her own things, accountable to no one but herself. For the first time in 34 years, that felt like exactly enough. 2 years later, the garden party was Janet's idea, but I'd embraced it wholeheartedly. My backyard was full of the people who helped me rebuild my life. Janet and her husband, Michelle and David, Patricia, who'd become a friend, as well as a lawyer, Tom, who was dating a lovely woman named Carol and had become a wonderful grandfather to Emma and Jake, and Stephanie, who lived 3 blocks away and had become like a sister to me. Sarah was there too, with her new boyfriend Mark Avipio, kind man who treated her children like his own and had never once asked her for money. She'd gotten her real estate license and was thriving as a single mother who'd learned to trust her own judgment again. "Speech," Janet called out as I carried the cake to the picnic table. "It's not my birthday," I protested. "No, Patricia," said with a grin, "but it's your freedom anniversary. 2 years since you kicked Marcus out of your life and took your power back." I looked around at the faces of people who'd seen me at my worst and helped me become my best. 2 years ago, I'd been a woman who worked at Tim Hortons, LIVED, paycheck to paycheck, and let her son steal her dignity along with her money. Today, I was a woman who'd gone back to school for her accounting degree, bought a second property as an investment, and had learned to value herself enough to demand respect from everyone in her life. Marcus was still in prison with 18 months left on his sentence. He'd written me letters that I'd returned unopened, and he tried to call collect several times. I'd blocked the calls. Emma and Jake spent every other weekend with me now. And for their sake, I hoped that someday Marcus would become the kind of man who deserved their love. But I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for that transformation, and I certainly wouldn't sacrifice my peace to make it happen. "You know what?" I said, raising my glass of wine. "I do have something to say," the group quieted. 2 years ago, I thought being a good mother meant accepting whatever treatment my son gave me. I thought love meant never saying no, never setting boundaries, never putting my own needs first. I was wrong. I looked at Sarah, who was smiling through tears. The best thing I ever did for Marcus was stop enabling him. The best thing I ever did for myself was learning that my worth isn't measured by how much I'm willing to sacrifice for people who don't appreciate it. "To freedom," Stephanie said, raising her glass. "To friendship," Tom added. "To finally growing a backbone at 59 years old," I said with a laugh, as the sun set over my garden, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete contentment with my own company and my own choices. Marcus had stolen a lot from me over the years, but in the end, he'd also given me something invaluable, the knowledge that I was strong enough to choose myself, even when it meant losing someone I'd loved for 34 years. It was the best trade I'd ever made. Did Jenny's revenge story give you the justice you were craving? If you loved watching Marcus get exactly what he deserved and want to see more empowering stories of people who finally stood up for themselves, smash that like button. Subscribe for more satisfying tales of justice, family drama, and people who learn to choose themselves over toxic relationships. Tell us in the comments, what was the most satisfying moment of Marcus's downfall? Was it the arrest, the court, hearing, or finding out about his secret double life? Which story should we tell next? A mother-in-law who got the ultimate revenge on her manipulative daughter-in-law. A wife who discovered her husband's financial betrayal and made him pay. A daughter who exposed her narcissistic parents and built her own empire. Drop your vote below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a story of justice served cold. Because everyone deserves to hear about people who finally learn their worth.